So my name is Tassneem Perry. I was born in Sri Lanka and I lived and grew up in Colombo, which is the capital city. I was born into the Dawoodi Bohra community, which is a global community. And when I was 7, I had FGM done to me under medicalized medical setting. My parents drove me to my doctor to have it done. And after it was done, we never talked about it. And it was only later when I was a teenager, 15, 16, you start to kind of ask questions. And I would ask my mother questions about what was done, why was it done, what was the purpose behind this. And my mother didn't really have concrete, reasonable explanations. All her explanations seemed very vague, like she was just making up stuff, like this is to make you a good wife, this is to make you pure, this is to, this is the funniest one, like our ancestry is Arab and the Arabs are oversexed and this is to make you a good wife. I'm like, Mummy, it makes no sense. These are just, she was reaching to try and give me an answer because there was no answer. It was just cultural family practice. I think until I was a teenager, I didn't even realize what was done to me. I didn't know it was FGM because within the community, they used the word khatna. And I was 7, I didn't know what khatna meant. Nobody explained it to me. There was definitely no kind of understanding at all. And if I had not brought up the topic with my parents, well, with my mother, we would never have talked about it. Because once it's done, you don't talk about it. And my mom would say, why are you the only one that has all these questions? Like, why do you keep asking me these things? And I was like, I don't know. I think it's because I read. I was seen as different for wanting to know. It was only when I came to the UK and I got married that I really started to realize what had been done. Because, once I got married, I started questioning what would it have been like if they hadn't cut me? Would my relationship with my husband be different if I hadn't been cut? Until that point of time, it hadn't occurred to me of what I had lost and what they had taken away from me without consent, without explanation, without even a solid, valid reason. And it was around the time I got married and I started understanding all of this that I started questioning my faith, because this is something that we are told that is required for religious purposes. But if my religious leadership could get something so important wrong, then maybe they were wrong in lots of other areas as well. And I remember I would cry and cry because I was losing my faith. And it was such a hard process because as I started understanding what FGM had cost me, I completely lost faith. And that was a very clear line that cost me my spirituality. So I always talk about, so FGM has physical trauma. Then there's the psychological and emotional trauma. There is the mental trauma. But I think we also need to be really aware that there can be spiritual trauma. I have huge mental trauma, emotional trauma. When I started talking about it, I just wept. It took me months and months of counseling to be able to talk about it in a rational, reasonable way without floods of tears and anger. Because the anger is, the anger is a really deep anger. And the worst part is I don't know who to be angry at. Am I angry with my parents? Well, I can't be because my parents love me. Am I angry with my community? Well, yes, but also they didn't think they were hurting me. So, you have all this anger and you have all this rage, and what do you do with it? I can't really remember anything. It's one, I was 7, and 2, I think I've just blanked those memories. I don't know why. Maybe it was because there was pain involved, but I can't really remember very much. According to the WHO guidelines, I have type 1, which is partial or total removal of the clitoris. And I actually was examined in the UK by a specialist, and she said that there's no scarring. So what they did to me, they did really well. They've not hurt me unduly, but I have no visible clitoris. I had the best form of FGM, if you can talk about it that way. So I didn't have any pain. My physical thing is, I don't know what sex would have been like if I was whole. And that's not really a physical problem. It's just an unknown. I mean, I am lucky that my husband is wonderful and that we have a very good sex life because we know each other and we've been together for so many years now. But I always wonder, if I had not been cut, what would things be like? It's entirely taboo. I never spoke about it to anyone. And I only started speaking about this publicly after my mother died. So I was married, I had done my PhD, my mother passed away, I was 40. So, it took a long time. And it was only then that I went to my GP and I said, look, this has happened to me. Can I have some counseling? And it was once I began the counseling that I felt whole enough and brave enough to talk about this. So it took a long time and a lot of things to happen to make me capable of speaking about it. So I think the more people who talk about this, the more education and awareness we can raise, the better. Because the thing is, FGM is not just the most horrific types that happen. There are different ways in which it can be done. And this is not a question of, they've cut so much off or they cut only this little bit off. Every bit of harm is mutilation. And giving it different names just messes the story. We need to be very clear that whatever harm, any kind of harm, is mutilation. And especially the fact that I was hurt at 7. I mean, if you want to hurt yourself and you're an adult, that's a different matter. But I was 7. I mean, that is not right. I think more awareness is definitely helping. Women have a better chance of saying no. For example, one of my friends, she had 2 girls, and she and her husband decided that they were not going to cut their daughter. And her family and his family, they were furious. But my friend and her husband, amazing couple, they were like, no, we are not going to do this to our girls. And they didn't. But, they went through so much at that point. People stopped talking to them because it was like unimaginable that you would not cut your girls. But I mean, what a wonderful parents. I admire them so much. They believed in what they were saying and they didn't do it. And I hope that this kind of activism, this protesting, it'll give women like that more courage to say, no, we're not doing our girls. We need to be brave. It's like saying, people always assume that it's happening to people who are not like them. It's the other. They're not like us. We can't talk about it, or we don't understand their culture. But that's not true. The women who are cut are just like you. I am just like you. And I think we need to break the fear. I think all women, all people should stand up and say, this is enough now. There is no medical reason why we're doing this to our girls, to our women. And if you want to do it for religious reasons, do it as an adult. That is informed consent. But don't do it to children.